They love to call it revenge, but all I really did was stop being the easiest person to lie to.
The thing about being married to a woman who thinks she's better than you is that eventually she'll prove it. At least that's what I thought until I discovered Hannah wasn't just cheating on me. She was laughing about it with her friends over mimosas at our kitchen island every Saturday morning. I'm Eric Mallard, and I'm the kind of guy people forget exists until their Wi-Fi stops working. 41 years old, IT consultant, father of two teenagers who actually like me, and until 3 months ago, husband to the most manipulative woman in suburban Atlanta. Hannah always said I was reliable but boring, which I figured was wife speak for pays the bills but doesn't make me wet. Turns out it was actually wife speak for perfect mark for a cheating scandal. The first crack in my perfect suburban prison came on a Tuesday morning when I overheard Hannah on the phone with her best friend Chloe. I was fixing the garbage disposal, again, while Hannah paced around the kitchen in her yoga pants, talking loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I'm telling you, Chloe, Jay's stamina is incredible. Like, Eric falls asleep after 5 minutes, but Jay can go for hours. She laughed, that fake tinkle she used when she wanted to sound sophisticated. It's like upgrading from dial-up to fiber optic, you know? I nearly electrocuted myself on the disposal switch. Jay. As in Jaden Voss, the flashy gym owner who looked like he'd been carved from protein powder and steroids. The same Jay who'd been liking every single one of Hannah's Instagram posts for the past 6 months. I stayed under the sink listening to my wife describe my related to Zek's performance like a Yelp review for a disappointing restaurant. The conversation got worse from there. Apparently, Jay had abs you could grate cheese on and knew exactly how to make a woman feel appreciated. Unlike her boring husband, who probably doesn't even notice when I get my hair done. For the record, I always noticed when she got her hair done. I just stopped commenting after she told me my compliments sounded obligatory and weird. That night at dinner, I watched Hannah push her salad around her plate while scrolling through her phone. Our kids, Alice and Max, were doing homework at the table, 17 and 15 respectively, both sharp enough to sense the tension but too polite to call it out directly. Dad, can you help me with this calculus problem? Alice asked, sliding her textbook across the table. Sure, sweetheart. I glanced at the equation, then at Hannah, who was smirking at something on her screen. Probably a text from Mr. Abs of Steel. This is a derivatives problem. See, you take the function and... Oh my God, Eric, not everyone needs a lecture, Hannah interrupted without looking up. Just give her the answer so we can finish dinner. Alice frowned. Actually, I want to understand how to do it. Of course you do, honey. You're smart like your dad, I said, which earned me an eye roll from Hannah. Smart doesn't pay for private school, Hannah muttered. No, but my boring IT job does, I replied. She finally looked up from her phone. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just acknowledging that my boring, reliable income keeps this family running. Hannah's face flushed red. Are you trying to start a fight in front of the kids? I'm trying to help our daughter with homework. You're the one making snide comments. Max cleared his throat. Maybe I should go upstairs. No, stay, Hannah said firmly. Your father's being dramatic again. Alice looked between us with the sharp intelligence she'd inherited from me. Are you guys okay? You've been weird lately. We're fine, sweetheart, I said. Your mom's just stressed about work. I'm not stressed about work, Hannah snapped. I'm stressed about living with someone who thinks doing the bare minimum makes him husband of the year. The bare minimum, right. Like working 60-hour weeks to afford her yoga classes and wine club membership was the bare minimum. Like fixing every broken thing in this house myself instead of calling repair services was the bare minimum. Like pretending I didn't know she was screwing her trainer was the bare minimum. I helped Alice with her calculus, and we finished dinner in tense silence. Later that night, after the kids went to bed, I sat in my home office and did what any self-respecting IT guy would do. I started gathering data. Hannah's phone was connected to our family cloud account, which meant her photos automatically backed up to our shared drive. It took me about 10 minutes to find what I was looking for. Pictures of her and Jay at restaurants I'd never been to, selfies in his car, mirror shots at his gym with captions like, getting my sweat on with my favorite trainer. The timestamps told the whole story. Every Tuesday and Thursday when she claimed to be at book club. Every Saturday morning when she said she was doing yoga with Mel. every Sunday afternoon when she was supposedly grocery shopping. I should have been furious. Instead, I felt oddly calm. Like when you finally identify the bug that's been crashing your system, there's almost relief in knowing what you're dealing with. My phone buzzed with a text from my old college buddy Pete, who ran a private investigation service downtown. Beer tomorrow? I need to complain about my ex-wife's latest nonsense. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, actually, I might need your professional help. The next evening, I met Pete at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar that served decent wings and minded its own business. Pete was already 3 beers in when I arrived, his weathered face creased with the kind of cynicism that came from 20 years of documenting other people's betrayals. So, he said, after I'd ordered a beer and filled him in on the basics, your wife's hitting her trainer, and you want me to document it for divorce court? Something like that, I said. But I want more than just evidence. I want to understand the whole picture. Who knows? Who's helping? How long it's been going on? Pete grinned. You want to map the conspiracy. Exactly. That's my favorite kind of case. The cheaters always got enablers. Friends who cover for them. People who think they're being loyal, but are actually just accessories to fraud. Fraud? Marriage is a legal contract, Eric. She's violating the terms while taking your money to fund her side piece. That's fraud in my book. Over the next 2 weeks, Pete and I built a comprehensive picture of Hannah's double life. It was almost impressive in its scope. Chloe wasn't just her confidant. She was actively providing alibis and cover stories. Mel, Hannah's other best friend, was letting Hannah use her credit card for hotel rooms to avoid leaving a paper trail. Even Hannah's brother Mark was involved, having introduced Hannah to Jay at his gym in the first place. The more I learned, the angrier I got. Not just about the cheating, but about the elaborate network of lies that had been constructed around me. These people had been meeting in my house, drinking my wine, eating my food, all while helping my wife make a fool of me. The breaking point came on a Friday night when Hannah announced we were having a dinner party. Mark's coming over with his new girlfriend, she said, bustling around the kitchen in preparation. And Chloe and Mel will be here too. I want everything to be perfect. Perfect for what? Just a nice evening with family and friends. Is that okay with you, or do you need to find something wrong with it? I watched her arrange flowers in a vase, her movements sharp and agitated. She'd been increasingly hostile over the past few weeks, probably sensing that I was onto her, but not sure how much I knew. It's fine, I said. Should I pick up more wine? I already got some. The good stuff, not that cheap crap you usually buy. The good stuff, right. Paid for with my credit card, no doubt, but somehow I was still the one with bad taste. Mark arrived first, strutting into our house like he owned it. Hannah's younger brother had always been a piece of work, a failed entrepreneur who cycled through get-rich-quick schemes and left a trail of debt in his wake. He was currently between opportunities, which meant he was living off their mother and whatever he could borrow from Hannah. Eric, he said, slapping me on the back with fake enthusiasm. How's the computer business? IT consulting, I corrected. Same as always. Right, still fixing people's email problems. Mark had a talent for making my job sound trivial, which was impressive considering he'd never held steady employment for more than 6 months. Tonight, he was wearing a designer shirt that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year, paid for with money he didn't have. Chloe and Mel arrived together, air-kissing Hannah and gushing over her outfit. I watched them settle into the living room, wine glasses already in hand, and marveled at how normal they all seemed. Like they weren't actively participating in the destruction of my marriage. Dinner conversation was the usual suburban theater, discussions of school districts, vacation plans, and local gossip. I played my part, making appropriate responses while mentally reviewing everything Pete had discovered about each of these people. Chloe, for instance, wasn't just covering for Hannah's affair. She was jealous of it. Pete had photographed her having lunch with Jay twice in the past week, apparently trying to get some of Hannah's action for herself. Mel's marriage was apparently on the rocks, too, which explained why she was so eager to enable Hannah's cheating. Misery loves company and all that. And Mark was deeper in debt than I'd imagined. Gambling debts, specifically, to some very unforgiving people, which explained why he'd been so eager to introduce Hannah to Jay. He was hoping his sister's trainer might have connections to help him out of his financial hole. So, Eric, Mark said, cutting into his steak with theatrical precision, Hannah tells me you're still driving that old Honda. When are you going to upgrade to something with a little more style? The Honda runs fine, I said, but it's so practical. Don't you want something that makes a statement? What kind of statement should I make? Mark laughed. That you're successful, that you've made it, that you're not just some tech support guy who peaked in college. The table went quiet. Hannah was staring at her plate. Chloe and Mel were suddenly fascinated by their wine glasses, and my kids, who had been eating quietly in the corner, looked up with matching expressions of shock. Mark, Hannah said softly, that's not. What? I'm just saying Eric could stand to have a little more ambition. Look at Jay, for example. Guy started with nothing and built a whole fitness empire. That's the kind of drive that gets you somewhere in life. Jay. Of course Mark would bring up Jay. You're right, I said calmly. Jay is quite an impressive guy. Hannah's told me a lot about him. Hannah's fork clattered against her plate. I barely know him. Oh, come on, sis, Mark said with a grin. You talk about that guy all the time. Jay this, Jay that. If I didn't know better, I'd think you had a crush. The silence stretched out like a taut wire. Alice and Max were staring at their mother, who had gone pale except for 2 bright red spots on her cheeks. I think, Hannah said carefully, we should change the subject. Why? Mark pressed on, oblivious to the tension he'd created. Jay's a great guy. Maybe Eric could learn something from him. You know, about taking care of himself, being more exciting. That's enough, I said. Mark turned to me with mock surprise. What? I'm trying to help you out here, brother-in-law. Hannah deserves a husband who puts in some effort. And what kind of effort do you put in, Mark? What do you mean? I set down my fork and looked directly at him. What effort do you put into anything? Your career, your relationships, paying your debts? Mark's smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You're talking about ambition and success while you're living off your mother and borrowing money from your sister to pay off gambling debts. Eric, Hannah warned. No, it's fine, Mark said, his voice getting louder. If Eric wants to air dirty laundry, let's air it all. At least I take risks. At least I don't just settle for mediocrity and call it stability. Taking risks with other people's money isn't brave, Mark. It's pathetic. Mark stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You know what, Eric? I'm tired of your attitude. You sit there acting all superior, but you're just a boring, middle-aged tech guy who can't even keep his wife interested. The words hung in the air like smoke. Alice gasped audibly, and Max pushed back from the table. Mark, Hannah said urgently, stop. But Mark was on a roll now, wine and resentment fueling his mouth. It's true. Hannah's miserable. Anyone can see that. She's married to a guy who thinks changing a printer cartridge makes him handy, who drives a 10-year-old Honda and thinks that's being responsible. No wonder she's looking for excitement somewhere else. What does that mean? Alice demanded, looking between her mother and uncle. It means, Mark said, swaying slightly, that your mom deserves better than— Shut up, Hannah hissed. Why should I shut up? It's not like it's a secret. Half the neighborhood knows about— Shut up, Hannah screamed. But it was too late. The damage was done. Alice and Max were staring at their mother with dawning understanding. Chloe and Mel looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs, and Mark was standing there with his mouth open, finally realizing what he'd just done. I stood up slowly, feeling oddly calm despite the chaos erupting around me. Kids, I said quietly, why don't you go upstairs? Dad, Alice started, please, just for a few minutes. They left reluctantly, shooting worried looks over their shoulders. When I heard their bedroom doors close, I turned back to the table. So, I said conversationally, half the neighborhood knows about what exactly? Hannah was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Eric, I can explain. Actually, let Mark explain. He seems to have a lot to say about my marriage. Mark had sobered up quickly, realizing the magnitude of his mistake. Look, I didn't mean— Yes, you did. You meant every word. So finish the thought. Hannah's looking for excitement somewhere else. Where specifically? Eric, please, Mel said quietly. This isn't— Isn't what? Isn't any of my business? My wife's affair isn't my business? The word affair seemed to suck all the air out of the room. Hannah's sobs got louder. Chloe was staring into her wine glass like it might offer escape, and Mark looked like he was going to be sick. How long? I asked Hannah. She couldn't meet my eyes. Eric, how long have you been sleeping with Jay? It's not serious. It's just— How long? 6 months, she whispered. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of elaborate deceptions of me being the fool who didn't know his wife was screwing her trainer. 6 months of her coming home to me after being with him, of her sitting across from me at dinner while planning her next betrayal. And all of you knew, I said, looking around the table. Chloe, Mel, Mark, you all knew and you sat in my house, ate my food, drank my wine, and helped her lie to me. We didn't want to hurt you, Mel said weakly. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. You didn't want to hurt me? What the hell do you think you've been doing for 6 months? Eric, Hannah said, reaching for my hand. I know this looks bad, but it's not what you think. I love you, I do. Jay is he's just fun. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything? I pulled my hand away. You've been lying to me for 6 months, using our friends to cover for you, making me look like an idiot in front of our children, and it doesn't mean anything? You don't understand, she said desperately. Shh. You're never here. You're always working. And when you are here, you're just distant. I felt alone, and Jay made me feel special. So this is my fault? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying our marriage has problems, and instead of dealing with them, I made a mistake. A mistake that lasted 6 months? Mark cleared his throat. Look, maybe I should go. Sit down, I said sharply. You started this, you can finish it. He sat. I looked around the table at these people who'd been lying to me, manipulating me, making me the rear of a joke I wasn't even aware of. The fury I'd been suppressing for weeks finally broke through. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. Mark, you're going to apologize to my children for what you just did. Then you're going to leave my house and never come back. Now wait a minute. No, you wait. You want to talk about success and ambition? Let's talk about your gambling debts. Let's talk about the 15 grand you owe to Tony Marcello's crew. Let's talk about how you've been stealing data from your temp jobs to sell to identity thieves. Mark went white. How did you? I'm an IT guy, remember? I know how to find information, and I know Tony doesn't like it when people can't pay their debts. You can't prove any of that? I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Mark's voice, clear as day, talking to someone about moving merchandise and cleaning up data files from his last office job. Want to bet? Mark stared at the phone like it was a snake. Where did you get that? From your own phone, genius. You called your fence while connected to my Wi-Fi network. Did you forget I can monitor network traffic? Hannah was staring at her brother in shock. Mark, what is he talking about? Nothing, Mark said quickly, unless Eric's making things up. I played another recording. This one was Mark talking to a bookie about extending his credit line, mentioning specific bets and amounts that painted a clear picture of his gambling addiction. Still making it up? Mark's face was gray now. He looked around the table for support, but found none. Even Hannah was staring at him with disgust. You stole from your employers? She asked. I needed the money and it wasn't hurting anyone. It's identity theft, Mark. People's lives get ruined by that. Says the woman who's been cheating on her husband for 6 months. Mark snapped. That's different. How is that different? You're both liars. I held up my hand for silence. Mark, here's the deal. You're going to walk upstairs, apologize to Alice and Max for disrupting their home, and then you're going to leave. If you ever contact my family again, these recordings go to the police and to Tony Marcello. Are we clear? Mark opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He nodded slowly. Good. Chloe, Mel, you're leaving too. And if I find out either of you has been spreading gossip about my family, I'll make sure your husbands know about your roles in this whole mess. They gathered their purses without a word and headed for the door. Mark followed, pausing only to mutter a half-hearted apology in the direction of the stairs. When they were gone, I turned back to Hannah, who was still crying into her hands. So, I said, what happens now? She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. I don't know. I'm sorry, Eric. I'm so sorry. Are you sorry you did it or sorry you got caught? Both, she admitted. I know that makes me terrible, but it's the truth. At least she was being honest for once. I want you to end it with Jay, I said. I will. I'll call him tonight. No, you'll call him now, in front of me. Hannah's hands shook as she dialed Jay's number. When he answered, I could hear his voice through the speakers, smooth and confident. Hey, beautiful, how's the dinner party going? Hannah glanced at me, then said, Jay, we need to talk. I can't see you anymore. There was a pause. What? Why? Did something happen? Eric knows about us. Another pause, longer this time. Mess. How much does he know? Everything. Okay, don't panic. We can handle this. Is he there now? Yes. Put me on speaker. Hannah looked at me questioningly. I nodded. Eric, Jay's voice filled the kitchen. I know this is awkward, but we're all adults here. Hannah and I have something special, and I think we should be able to work this out like civilized people. I almost laughed. Work it out? Yeah, man. Look, I'm not trying to steal your wife. Hannah just needed something you weren't giving her. Maybe we can figure out an arrangement that works for everyone. An arrangement? You know, something modern, progressive. Hannah's happy, you're happy, everyone wins. I stared at the phone in disbelief. This guy was actually suggesting some kind of polyamorous arrangement with my wife in my kitchen after 6 months of lying and betrayal. Jay, I said calmly, let me explain something to you. There is no arrangement. There is no working this out. There's only you staying the hell away from my family. Come on, Eric, don't be so possessive. Hannah's a grown woman who can make her own choices. You're right. She can make her own choices, and she just chose to end things with you. Did she? Or are you forcing her to say that? I looked at Hannah, who was staring at the phone with an expression I couldn't read. Hannah, Jay continued, you don't have to do this. You know how good we are together. Don't let him bully you into giving up your happiness. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Jay, I have to think about my kids. Your kids will adjust. Kids are resilient. My kids will adjust to their mother being a cheating sex worker? The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I was past caring about politeness. Hey, Jay's voice got sharp. Don't talk to her like that. I'll talk to my wife however I want in my own house. Not if you want to keep her, you won't. Hannah deserves better than some bitter, controlling, rude person who can't satisfy her. That did it. I picked up the phone and said, Jay, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to delete Hannah's number from your phone. You're going to stay away from her, from me, and from my children. If I see you anywhere near my family, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation. Jay laughed. Is that a threat, Eric? Because I'm not scared of some middle-aged computer nerd. It's not a threat, it's a promise. I hung up the phone and looked at Hannah, who was staring at me with something that might have been fear or might have been respect. Is that really how you see me? She asked quietly. As a cheating sex worker? I considered the question seriously. I see you as someone who made a choice to betray our marriage, our family, and me personally. What would you call that? She didn't have an answer. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning my next moves. The dinner party confrontation had felt good, but it was just the beginning. Hannah was still living in our house, still trying to manage the narrative, still acting like this was something we could work through with counseling and time. I had other ideas. Pete and I met again at Murphy's to go over the evidence he'd gathered. The file was thick with photographs, credit card records, phone logs, and witness statements. Hannah and Jay had been sloppy, probably because they thought I was too boring and trusting to ever catch on. So what's the plan? Pete asked. Straight to divorce court? Eventually. But first, I want them to understand what they've done. Hannah's spent 6 months making me look like a fool. I think it's time to return the favor. Pete grinned. I like the way you think. What did you have in mind? I pulled out a printed email. Hannah's company has a strict policy about employee conduct. Cheating isn't specifically mentioned, but behavior that reflects poorly on the company is grounds for termination. You're going to get her fired? I'm going to let her get herself fired. All I have to do is make sure the right people know about her extracurricular activities. And Jay's got a business to protect. A gym that caters to suburban families, built on his reputation as a trustworthy fitness professional. I wonder how his clients would feel if they knew he was sleeping with married customers. Pete nodded approvingly. Social destruction, I like it. More effective than legal action and a lot more satisfying. Plus, it's all true. I'm not making anything up or planting false evidence. I'm just making sure the truth gets to the right people. When do we start? We already have. I showed Pete my phone. While we'd been talking, I'd been busy on social media. Hannah's Facebook page, which she used to project an image of perfect suburban motherhood, now had several new tagged photos. Pictures of her and Jay at restaurants, holding hands in his car, kissing outside a hotel. How did you get access to her account? I've been married to her for 18 years. I know all her passwords. Within an hour, the photos had dozens of likes and comments. Hannah's friends, neighbors, and coworkers were all getting a front row seat to her secret life. My phone started buzzing with texts and calls, but I ignored them all. The next morning, Hannah stormed into my home office where I was working. "What the hell did you do?" she demanded, shoving her phone in my face. The screen showed her Facebook page, now flooded with comments ranging from shocked, "OMG, Hannah, is this real?" to judgmental, "This is disgusting, what about your kids?" to gleefully gossipy. I knew something was going on. "I shared some photos," I said calmly. "Is there a problem?" "You can't do this. This is harassment. It's documentation. These are real photos of you and your boyfriend, taken in public places. There's nothing illegal about sharing them. But my job, my reputation, should have thought about that before you started screwing your trainer." Hannah's face was red with fury and embarrassment. "Eric, please, you have to take them down. People are calling me. My boss wants to see me this afternoon." "Then you should probably get your story straight. This isn't just hurting me, it's hurting the kids too. Alice came home from school crying yesterday because her friends were asking about the photos." That gave me pause. I hadn't considered how the social media blast would affect Alice and Max. They were innocent sufferers in this whole mess, and I didn't want to make things worse for them. "What did you tell her?" I asked. What could I tell her? That her mother made a terrible mistake and now the whole world knows about it? I studied Hannah's face. She looked genuinely distraught, but I'd learned not to trust her emotions. She was an expert at manipulation and making herself the sufferer, even when she was clearly in the wrong. "I'll take down the photos," I said finally. Relief flooded her features. "Thank you. On one condition." The relief disappeared. "What?" "You move out. Today." "Eric, no. This is my house, too. These are my kids. This is the house I pay for. And these are the kids you traumatized with your affair. You want the photos down? Pack your bags." Hannah stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fine, but this isn't over. I'm going to fight for custody, for my share of everything. You think you can just throw me away after 18 years? "I'm not throwing you away, Hannah. You threw yourself away when you decided Jay was more important than our marriage." She packed 2 suitcases and left that afternoon. I took down the Facebook photos as promised, but the damage was already done. Hannah's perfect image was shattered, and everyone in our social circle knew it. That evening, Alice and Max came to my office to talk. "Dad," Alice said carefully, "are you and Mom getting divorced?" I looked at my kids, really looked at them. Alice had my dark hair and sharp features, but Hannah's green eyes. Max was quieter, more thoughtful, with Hannah's blonde hair, but my build. They were good kids who didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of their parents' war. "Probably," I said honestly. "I'm sorry you have to go through this." "It's not your fault," Max said quietly. "We know Mom was... We heard the fight at dinner. That doesn't make it easier for you guys." Alice sat down across from me. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you going to be okay? You seem different lately, angrier." I considered how to answer that. The truth was, I felt more alive than I had in years. The anger was energizing, clarifying. For the first time in my marriage, I felt like I was in control. "I'm going to be fine," I said. "Better than fine, actually. Your mother's affair hurt me, but it also opened my eyes to some things I'd been ignoring." "Like what?" "Like the fact that I'd been settling for a marriage that wasn't making either of us happy. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show you what you really want." "What do you want?" Max asked. "I want to be respected. I want to be with people who value me for who I am, not who they think I should be. And I want you guys to see that you don't have to accept being treated badly, even by people who claim to love you." Alice nodded slowly. "Mom did treat you badly, didn't she? Even before the affair. Your mother and I brought out the worst in each other. That's not entirely her fault. But the cheating is," Max said. "Yes, the cheating is entirely her fault." Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new routine. Hannah was staying with Mel, whose marriage had indeed fallen apart after her husband learned about her role in covering up the affair. Chloe had been excommunicated from their friend group after someone leaked screenshots of her texts about trying to seduce Jay herself. Mark had disappeared entirely, probably trying to stay ahead of his creditors. The social fallout was more extensive than I'd expected. Hannah's affair had become the neighborhood's primary source of entertainment, with new details and rumors circulating daily. I felt a little guilty about my role in turning my family's private crisis into public spectacle, but not guilty enough to regret it. Jay, meanwhile, was dealing with his own problems. Several of his gym's family memberships had been canceled after words spread about his relationship with a married client. His business partner was reportedly furious, and there were rumors that Jay might be forced to sell his stake in the gym. I was working late one evening when my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I could see Jay standing on my front porch, looking agitated. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. "What do you want?" "We need to talk," Jay said, man to man. "I don't think we have anything to discuss. Look, this whole situation has gotten out of hand. My business is suffering and Hannah's a mess. Your kids are caught in the middle. Don't you think it's time to be the bigger man and find a way to move forward?" I almost laughed. "The bigger man? You mean like you were when you were screwing my wife? That's between me and Hannah. You and I don't have to be enemies. Actually, we do. You made us enemies when you decided to have Zex, my wife." Jay's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to be reasonable here, Eric. But if you keep pushing, you're not going to like what happens next." "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check. You think you're winning this little game, but you're just making enemies. Hannah's not the only one who thinks you're a controlling, rude person." "Who else thinks that?" "Everyone, man. Your neighbors, your kids' friends' parents, people at Hannah's work. They all see what you're doing, destroying a woman's life because your ego got bruised." I felt a flash of doubt. Was that really how people saw this? Was I the villain in this story? Then I remembered the 6 months of lies, the elaborate deceptions, the way Hannah and her friends had laughed about my related to Zek's performance over mimosas in my kitchen. "Jay," I said calmly, "I want you to listen carefully. I didn't destroy Hannah's life. She did that herself when she chose to cheat. I just made sure people knew the truth about who she really is. The truth according to you. The truth according to photographs, credit card records, and witness statements. Would you like to see them?" Jay was quiet for a moment. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to disappear. Leave town, find a new gym, start over somewhere else. As long as you're here, you're a reminder of what Hannah did to our family. I'm not going anywhere. I have a business here, a life here. Then you'll have to live with the consequences of your choices." Jay stepped closer to the door, and I could see the anger in his eyes. "You know what your problem is, Eric? You think you're smarter than everyone else, but you're just a bitter middle-aged loser who can't handle the fact that his wife found someone better." "Someone better? You mean someone who sleeps with married women and destroys families for fun?" "I mean someone who knows how to make a woman feel alive." "Hannah told me all about your pathetic attempts at romance, your boring conversation, your complete lack of passion. She said being married to you is like being married to a piece of furniture." The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were surprising, but because they confirmed what I'd suspected for years, that Hannah had been mocking me behind my back, sharing intimate details of our marriage with her lover. "Well," I said, "I guess it's a good thing she won't have to be married to furniture much longer." Jay smiled, thinking he'd gotten to me. "Yeah, and when the divorce is final, maybe she'll be free to be with someone who actually appreciates her. Maybe, of course, that assumes you'll still be interested in her when she's not forbidden fruit anymore. Guys like you tend to lose interest once the thrill of cheating is gone." The smile faded from Jay's face. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're an aggressor who targets married women because they're easier to manipulate than single ones. I know your business is failing because people don't trust you around their wives. And I know that in 6 months, when the novelty wears off, you'll dump Hannah for your next sufferer. You're wrong." "Am I? How many married clients have you slept with, Jay? Just Hannah, or is she part of a pattern?" Jay's silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought. Hannah thinks she's special, but she's just another conquest, another bored housewife who was stupid enough to fall for your act." "Have Zex you," Jay said quietly. "No, thanks. I'm not married to you." Jay stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. I watched him get into his flashy sports car and drive off, feeling oddly satisfied. The conversation had confirmed what I'd suspected. Jay was exactly the kind of shallow, predatory, rude person who would abandon Hannah the moment she stopped being convenient. The next few weeks brought a series of small victories. Hannah's company had indeed fired her for conduct unbecoming, though they'd been diplomatic enough to call it a mutual separation. Jay's gym had lost several more clients, and his business partner was reportedly looking for ways to buy him out. Mark had been arrested for identity theft after someone, definitely not me, had tipped off the police about his activities. But the real satisfaction came from watching Hannah's support system crumble. Chloe and Mel were no longer speaking to her after their own marriages imploded. Her mother, initially sympathetic, had turned cold after learning the full extent of Hannah's deceptions. Even her book club had asked her to leave. citing drama as the reason. Hannah was discovering what I'd learned years ago, that social connections built on shallow foundations don't survive real adversity. I was reviewing divorce paperwork when Alice knocked on my office door. "Dad, can we talk?" "Of course, sweetheart. Come in." Alice sat down across from me, looking more serious than a 17-year-old should have to look. "I talked to Mom today," she said. "How is she?" "Not good. She's living in some crappy apartment. She can't find a job, and Jay broke up with her last week." I felt a moment of sympathy for Hannah, followed immediately by anger at myself for feeling it. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Really?" I considered the question honestly. "I'm sorry she's suffering. I'm not sorry she's facing consequences for her actions." "What's the difference?" "The difference is that I never wanted to hurt your mother. I wanted her to be honest with me, to respect our marriage, to consider our family before she made selfish choices. When she couldn't do that, consequences became inevitable." Alice nodded slowly. "She asked me to talk to you, to ask you to help her." "Help her how?" "She wants you to give her a reference for jobs, and she wants to know if she can come to Max's birthday party next month." I leaned back in my chair. Hannah's birthday party request was particularly galling. She wanted to maintain the appearance of being a good mother while avoiding responsibility for the chaos she'd created. "What do you think I should do?" I asked Alice. "I think—" Alice paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think Mom made her choices and now she has to live with them. But I also think Max would be hurt if she wasn't at his birthday. And the job reference? That's harder. She did mess up really badly, but she's still our mom. And if she can't find work, she can't pay for her own place, which means she might try to move back here." Alice was right. Hannah's financial desperation could become my problem if I wasn't careful. Better to help her achieve independence than risk her trying to manipulate her way back into our lives. "I'll give her a reference," I said, "a honest one that focuses on her professional skills, not her personal character. And she can come to Max's party, but only for 2 hours and only if she promises not to cause drama." Alice smiled. "Thanks, Dad. I know this is all really hard for you, too." "It's been educational," I said. "I've learned a lot about myself, about what I'm willing to tolerate, about what I really want from life." "What do you want?" "Peace, honesty, respect, and maybe eventually someone who appreciates those things too." "You mean dating?" The idea of dating still felt surreal. I'd been with Hannah for 20 years, married for 18. The thought of starting over with someone new was both terrifying and exciting. "Maybe someday," I said. "When I'm ready, when you and Max are ready. We just want you to be happy, Dad." "I am happy, happier than I've been in years, actually." And it was true, despite the chaos, despite the pain of betrayal, despite the uncertainty of rebuilding my life, I felt more authentic than I had in decades. The anger had burned away years of accumulated resentment and self-doubt, leaving me with a clearer sense of who I was and what I wanted. Max's birthday party was a small affair, just a few of his friends, Alice, me, and Hannah. She arrived exactly on time, bearing an expensive gift she probably couldn't afford, and spent the 2 hours trying to act like everything was normal. It was painful to watch. Hannah had always been good at social performance, but now she seemed fragile, desperate to prove she was still a good mother despite everything that had happened. "Thank you for letting me come," she said quietly as she was leaving. "Max wanted you here," I replied. "This was for him, not for you." "I know, but still, thank you." She looked like she wanted to say more, but I wasn't interested in a lengthy conversation. We'd said everything that needed to be said months ago. "Hannah," I said as she reached the door, "I hope you figure things out. For the kids' sake." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and left. 3 months later, Hannah found a job at a smaller company across town. It was a step down from her previous position, but it was honest work that allowed her to rent a decent apartment and maintain some dignity. Jay had indeed left town, selling his share of the gym and moving to Florida to start over. Mark was serving 6 months in county jail for identity theft. The neighborhood had moved on to new scandals, and my family had settled into a new normal. Alice was thriving in her senior year, already accepted to several colleges. Max had joined the robotics club and was building impressive projects with a focus and intensity that reminded me of myself at his age. As for me, I'd started dating a woman named Sarah, who worked at the kids' school. She was a widow, 10 years younger than me, with a dry sense of humor and no patience for drama. We'd been taking things slowly, But there was a comfort and honesty in our relationship that I'd never had with Hannah. You know, Sarah said one evening as we sat on my back porch watching the sunset, "You're nothing like I expected when we first met." What did you expect? Based on the gossip, I thought you'd be this bitter, vindictive guy who destroyed his ex-wife's life out of spite. And now I think you're someone who refused to be a sufferer. There's a difference. I considered that. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. Hannah lost her job, her friends, her reputation. That's a heavy price for an affair. She didn't just have an affair, Eric. She built an entire conspiracy around it, involving your friends, your family, your children. She made you a laughingstock in your own community while taking your money to fund her betrayal. What price would have been appropriate for that? Sarah was right, but I still sometimes felt the weight of what I'd done. Revenge had been satisfying, but it had also been consuming. I was glad to be moving beyond it. Besides, Sarah continued, you didn't destroy her life. You just stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own choices. There's a difference. Is there? Absolutely. A vindictive person would have kept pushing, kept finding new ways to hurt her. You documented what she did, made sure people knew the truth, and then you moved on. You built a new life instead of staying stuck in anger. I thought about that as I watched Alice and Max playing with Sarah's dog in the backyard. They'd been cautious about my dating at first, but they'd warmed up to Sarah quickly. She treated them like intelligent people rather than children, and she never tried to replace their mother or pretend our family's history didn't exist. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked. The way you handled things with Hannah? I considered the question seriously. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my children had to see their family torn apart. I regret that I wasted so many years in a marriage that wasn't working. But you don't regret standing up for yourself? No, I don't regret that. Good. Because the man who would let someone treat him the way Hannah treated you isn't someone I'd be interested in dating. I laughed. So my vindictive streak is attractive? Your refusal to be a sufferer is attractive. Your willingness to fight for what matters to you is attractive. Your loyalty to your children is attractive. The vindictive streak was just educational. Educational how? It taught me that you're not someone who can be pushed around or taken for granted. That's important in a relationship. Sarah was right. The experience with Hannah had changed me in fundamental ways. I was less trusting but more confident, less accommodating but more honest about my own needs and boundaries. I love you, I said suddenly. Sarah smiled. I love you too, even your dark side. Especially my dark side? Well, let's not get carried away. I love your dark side in moderation, properly channeled, and never directed at me. Deal. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the kids play as the sun set behind the trees. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely at peace. Not because I'd gotten revenge on Hannah, but because I'd finally learned to value myself enough to demand better. The undoing game was over, and I'd won, not by destroying my enemy, but by refusing to remain a sufferer. It was a lesson I hoped I'd never need to use again, but one I was grateful to have learned. Hannah would rebuild her life eventually, just as I had rebuilt mine. The difference was that I'd learned to build on a foundation of self-respect rather than the approval of others. It made all the difference in the world. As Sarah reached over to take my hand, I realized that the best revenge really was living well. Everything else had just been the warm-up act. The end.